And I will get to the end of the issue and it's all going to be okay. It's just that I have to remember that the path's not always in a straight line. And I've also had this week an amazing revelation, well, several really, but one that was really important. When someone else shared their heart, and it really affected me so strongly that it changed my place in the centre of the triangle, so I was able to center myself. So it is good when others share, because it takes you to a different place. And quite often it can take you to the centre of the triangle. That's pretty special, really. So it sounds fairly abstract, but that's my lessons for the week.
That's wonderful, Christine. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing. And oftentimes it's not easy to share, is it, in front of a group of people? And yet, when we do it, when we take the courage, we're actually giving comfort to someone else that doesn't know, that has the ability to take courage in taking the mic. I was one of those. And so by doing so and sharing your testimony touches everyone, and we don't know who you will touch. So it's wonderful. So thank you so much for that. I'll be actually taking a group of people, and if you guys are involved in the Awakening Within, people who've signed up for spirit guides. So I'm actually taking that group of people and teaching them in the practical side, in tuning in and going into, and how to tap into the spirit guides and the high places of friends that we have, and getting the guidance from there. So I'm looking forward to that, actually. So without further ado, we'll bring Warren in. So Warren, over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. Okay. Just decided to do that silly thing where I can't see the chats again. Okay. So welcome everyone. And I just was telling Grace that I had a bit of an interesting morning, which I didn't quite expect, and just in terms of a download. So I am going to be continuing on Tithing, but before I do, I'm going to actually share a pretty profound download which happened this morning as I prepared. So first way to share it is to first just go to, I'm going to actually show you these. So we're going to get you to look at these, the keys of Enoch. So I just want you to look at that fire letter, because every fire code was specifically given by Enoch to JJ Hertag as an activation key. And the higher languages happen through pictographs and through higher vibrational light language, which I'll be sharing more about today. And this is what's been getting revealed to me about exactly what keeps us entrapped in what's called the 3D realm and biochemical 3D. And I love what Christine was sharing just before. And it's true about higher vibrational thinking is just when things happen, knowing that we're going through challenges for a form of shifting, for a forming of alignment. And generally, the quicker that we see the lesson and the quicker that we understand what and why something is happening and keep ourselves in a higher vibrational way of thinking around about what's happening, things just shift so much quicker in your life. So this is what I've really been getting and feeling to share. Is just about this higher vibrational way of being. And just the whole process of what's called, as Hertak says, biochemical enslavement to keep us trapped in the 3D. So the key to the future of the living sciences is Torah, the creative language mathematics of all the living creatures that went into the creations of man. In the Torah are revealed the language transparencies of the higher evolution. Torah is the key to Kabbalah, the wisdom of many universes, of the many universes, and the key to the scriptures of the luminaries to come. Because of the gift of the Torah, we can say, "Blessed art thou, O Lord, creator of the luminaries." The Torah is indeed among the luminaries, the extension from one membrane to the next membrane. The languages, or the lower vibrational languages, which deny the many universes and the Torah of the higher evolution, are languages not of luminaries, but of fallen beings or archons, speaking with the heads of giants or reptilians or anakims, and the sons of Anak, and with the tongue of a speaking snake, programming life away from the chambers of living light. Now, this is I wanted to read that out exactly, or very close to it, just simply because it's a higher vibrational statement, if you can feel it. So just once again, just absorb this key, just for a little bit. I'm just going to put the key a little bit bigger so you can see the key. So just keep feeling it, and especially breathe that fire letter into your third eye. And just notice what you're feeling. Because in higher transmission of light language, and this is a little bit like how speed reading works, having done speed reading. Speed reading is all about going beyond the words and the linear words that you see and catching the whole essence and the vision and the imagination and the picture and the energy behind the words, which is actually there. So when I learned to speed read, that's exactly how I would do it and how I was taught. Best speed readers in the world can actually pick up a book and just skim the pages, literally just turning them over second after second after second, and still retain almost 100% of what they read. In the book about earth energies and physical spiritual energies that were actually discovered last year in the Theosophical Bookstore, it explained how the pyramids, the vortexes, are used for higher level energies. And now even in the midst of that, it explained further how the technologies of these higher realms find it actually quite interesting and quite intriguing how we still feel the need to read books. I can remember when I was taken into a deep state, picking up books and just putting them onto my chest and then onto my head, and I felt the knowledge download into them and I understood them. I didn't know how I did, but I just did. That is the new level of intelligence and light languages that we're now being called into. Those who are of the higher vibrational and who desire to walk that path. Understand that as you walk this path, this is a direct download coming now. As you walk this path, it'll be rewarding, but not easy by any means. More in the sense of the connection and commitment which will come from the depths of your soul and the detachment you will inevitably feel from the things around you. You will find the things you previously did of less interest, of less desire. It'll become even boring, even unfulfilling for you. You will feel very overawed by what's to come, because there's magnificence ahead, far more magnificence beyond we comprehend, imagine, or embrace. You have been led to this work because you're called for a mighty future. There is all kinds of great things in store when you walk among us and among our higher wisdom. We speak as the few divine heavenly ascended beings who walk directly in the presence of the Father, the brotherhood, the higher evolutionary thinking. We don't wish to do anything other than what we've come here to do. Let go of all things you've been doing which don't fulfill you or align with what you're called to do. So that was a bit of a message that just came to me. So anyway, and I can see it where it's coming from. It's hard to explain, but this is directly from the brotherhood and from those and from beings that somehow are connected and walking around the brotherhood, working directly with the Father. This is also part of the key. So there's like a calling to move into the dove, which is the mystery that Elijah and Enoch actually discovered. And this is just like a bit of a sneak preview that I've been told to give you today, because I've been getting spoken about a higher mystery school and mystery and evolution teachings that they're going to start doing as part of an ascension work. So I'm going to share a little bit quickly about this before we move on, about the whole struggle between the serpent and the dove, the ascension of the species, and what this actually indeed means. Christine, my book just opened at that page. Well, there you go, Christine. This is exactly what happened to me today. Exactly the kind of stuff going on to me. Just unbelievable synchronicities that I'm reading from. Yep. I'm going to just turn to the first thing that came to me this morning and just read extracts from that. I've been led to all kinds of things about letting go. But if you read Leviathan here in Job 41, canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which you let down? Can you put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto you? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant with thee? Will you take him as a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird, or bind him for thy maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Lay your hand upon him, remember the battle, do no more. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? So this is like the Father saying very clearly, even Leviathan is like my slave. I can do what I want with him. And yet no one outside of me can even dare take him on, this prince of hell. It says, upon earth there is not his like who is made without fear. How interesting that he does not have fear. He is a king over all the children of pride, those who choose to stay in their ego. It's interesting that after he said this as a complete aside, that Job then said, who by the way, the whole book had been questioning and being very angry and having a bit of a whinge to the Father, saying, I know now that you can do all things, that no thought can be hidden from you, withholden from you. Who is he that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I've uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me which I knew not. Here I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of you and declare unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. And this is the kind of humility that Job received after that download, where he realized how insignificant he really was when considered to the Father and to the higher work, which, by the way, was the beginning for him of a restoration of great prosperity, great abundance, and great success in his life. And if you read the rest of this chapter, it goes on to say that the Lord turned the captivity of Job. The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. He doubled his wealth, even before he was very rich. And it said everyone then came and brought him money and gave him gold. He was then blessed with 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, and back in those days, that's a fair bit of wealth. So the open door for financial wealth and abundance came once there was a complete humbling by Job, a complete owning of things, a complete owning and acceptance of where he was at and what he needed to do. And when you read the Keys of Enoch, I'm just going to actually get my journal because I wrote down what I was given. And I'm really summarizing directly here from the Keys of Enoch, from Key 206, where what he says, and I'm going to read extracts from it, but he basically, as well as from here, he explains about the importance of the sacred scriptures and what we're reading here. And how these whole books, for example, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, are all like basically the first 5 books are the first 5 what's called activations of the 5 geometrica, or the 5 light bodies. And one of the things when you read Hurtak's Over Self-Awakening and the Pistis Sophia and the Keys of Enoch, that before you can ascend or move back fully into your Adamic template body, higher body from the fall, all 5 light bodies or 5 bodies have to be reactivated. And the first 5 books of the Bible actually do that and start that process going. What he explains, for example, and I'll just read what I've written in my journal and then from various things and just let it sink in, because I saw this so clearly this morning. I'm pondering a way to explain it into words and realizing in the end I'm not going to be able to do a very good job. So I'm just going to read it and just allow whatever's meant to be downloaded to you to come to you, that you may see and understand. So what he explains, for example, is that the Torah is the complete computer code from Alpha to Omega to allow the astrophysical and the Bible as a consciousness pyramid for human initiations into the other kingdoms. So it's a complete computer code to undo what he also says is the computer code of the snake. So he explains that the computer code of what's called the serpent or Leviathan, which is there to actually keep you in the 3D. Because the voice of the Leviathan is actually a computer program that's programmed in by the fallen archons into the tree of life, which Enoch showed him in verse 11 of Key 206. He said that around the tree of life, which all of us are a tree of life and all connected to the tree of life, it says he saw a snake with the tongue of the computer program of galactic death. And he said today within our own tree of life and in our basic quest for ascension, man is being caught up in listening to the computerized technology. And it's interesting how he uses the word computerized. If you've seen The Matrix, how the whole movie was about a computerized program of control. And the computerized technology of the serpent or the reptilians or the Anakites or the elongated skull says there is no life beyond. There is no life beyond. Do not quest the knowledge of the high living God, for it is all here. You are the living God. This is it. Stop where you are. Even 2 days ago, I spoke to a very evolved guy, Peter Erickson, who Grace knows, and he was saying how, because he's got some pretty interesting contacts, he's discovering now how more than ever we're actually using phone towers and 5G towers for what's called energetic and biochemical warfare, in tampering with the vibrations of the mind and people's emotions, and specifically because they know how every single emotion of the human body and meridian line has a certain exact frequency, And even in the Keys of Enoch, he explains that everything is exact. The exact measurement of the circle of the heavens, the great measurement of the Great Pyramid was exact. The Fibonacci sequence numbers. All of these were absolutely exact. If you get one slight thing wrong, the sequence stops working. That is why the elongated skulls and the ancient were creating these exactly. It's why Noah's Ark was created exactly. It's why sacred geometry is exactly created. Because once the exactness is followed, it's an energy magnifier. So basically all of these exact things, for example, the book of Numbers, which is one of the first five books of the Bible, activation sequences of the life body. The first 2 chapters give a list of the families of Israel and exact population numbers. And when you add all these up, they add up exactly to the same measurements as what scientists and pyramidologists have found as the angular proportion of the 360-degree circle of the heavens. And even the speed of light. And when you actually add up the numbers in relation to Judah, the tribe of Judah, in the scroll of Numbers 2, verse 9, the exact speed of light is what the calculation of the numbers of the families are. So everything is numerologically and mathematically aligned. So those who have created this lower computer program are very aware of this. So hence why now, for example, these towers are being used to actually tamper with the frequencies in the meridian line. So if you've been noticing a bit of crazy stuff going on in your emotions or spiritual thing, understand this is going on right now. Understand also that if you have a conscious intention and know how to actually keep yourself activated and cleared, then it can't get near you. But if you are in any way off your game or starting to get kind of distracted or whatever else, you become very open to these things. So more than ever now, we're in a time where we're ascending and lifting up and getting ready for what I see as the Great Ascension and what's happening now, which the Keys of Enoch talks towards the end, the Great Ascension, where you'll see more and more until many will ascend into a new fifth dimensional earth. So today, that is what man is doing, man and woman. So rather than being involved in a conscious pattern of activations and continually shifting, by getting caught up within the 3D and in the face of entropic space, man is caught within the belly of the Leviathan and prevented from attaching his biological life station to other life forms, and starts to fall back into what's called lower language patterns of enslavement, which is what verse 9 explains, that in the fallen language patterns, don't exalt not creation, but what they do is they exalt the archons indirectly, and they are part of creating three-dimensional chemical enslavement within fixed magnetic fields. I was part of an underground movement years ago where I learned even the language used in the legal statutes, in the legal books that we use now in society are especially done in a way to create biochemical enslavement without even realizing it. Even words like government, for example, and words like resident, these are actually enslavement words that are designed to trap you energetically and biochemically into the tax system and into the government. And this is something I remember learning. There was a very evolved teacher years ago who was teaching how even the way you construct nouns, verbs, and adverbs can create a pattern of enslavement within you. Now, I'm going into some of my deeper stuff, which I don't normally ever share, as many of you know, but I'm just being led to do this. And it's these lower vibrational language patterns that lead you into biochemical enslavement. It's going back into the lower dimensional energetic patterns of the way you speak over your body, your mind, your finances, over everything that brings you back into lower level enslavement. So in verse 10, if we only listen to the language of the finite science, which is basically subservient to the lower heavens of the galactic state, we will never be able to go into the higher galaxies, but will remain locked in our media system, believing it is the be-all and end-all of creation. So the key then is speaking of the Yoltsa Amaroth, the creation of the luminaries, to start to move and ascend us into the higher life stations. So right now, the sons of light versus the sons of darkness, as we wage war against the biochemical rhythms of the snake and the dragon creation to limit the knowledge and open up the body of the Leviathan so that we can have open-ended star movement towards perfection. So what this is really saying is that by moving back into the higher language patterning and using the higher activations, what we're starting to do is awaken ourselves to escape or to depart from this. And that is why we're in such a great time of history right now in the world, because if you read teachings by David Wilcock and various others and the Mayans, there appears to be a cycle, depending on which ones you read, of either 25,960 years or 26,200, depending on which ones you're reading, which basically happens where you go through all of the signs of the zodiac and then there's a repeat. And according to this, we've come to the end of one of the cycles and we're now in the change. And every 25,960 years, there is what's called an ascension cycle, which has basically been missed time and time again. Right now, we're in in terms of this planet Earth, the highest consciousness period, pretty much in terms of energetic work, in either in history or for a very, very, very long time. Because in the ascension cycle, the higher knowledge is given en masse to give people an opportunity to become part of a new Earth and another what's called round of recycling to leave this program and go into the next stages of galactic life stations. And the keys of Enoch says the reality is many will come through and many will not come through, depending on basically the choices that are actually made. But no one will be left without a choice. And the Council of Nine was very clear with me last year, which is why I was told very clearly to get on this path now, because their plan is that everyone would be given a very clear, no doubt opportunity to be able to do this. Then when you read this as well, in the Keys of Enoch, explains that the building of the foundation stone, the Great Pyramid, is mathematically given in the book of Isaiah. And the energy vehicle of becoming numbered with the stars and in the higher dimensional thinking is given in Daniel and in the books of the other prophets. Without these scrolls, the people of God cannot use the ladder of Jacob to ascend to the heavens of the Optimum. And you may remember last week I shared about tithing and how tithing was actually connected with Jacob's ladder and how he ascended to the heavens of the Optimum. And he was afraid because he realized he'd been shown the portal straight into the 25th dimension, the Father's realms. So hence why finances is so important in mastering this area, so that you can basically prosper while still remaining aligned with the ladder and in the ascension path. The book of Revelation is necessary to give an actual account of how the divine council of the Elohim at the time of the restoration of Jerusalem will materialize the capstone of the Great Pyramid, as well as the garment of the Messiah for the children of light. Then in 18, the Leviathan is a traditional symbol which the ancients took to mean the entrapment of man within primordial spirals which deny the eternal mind, because as long as man thinks that they are God, they will never acquire the angelic radiations of true radiation and will remain locked in space and crucified in the 3D realm and caught up in linear time and linear 3D way of thinking. And thinking that even if not spoken outright, that he is or she is the only life force in the tree of life, and which is the galaxy, that he or she is God and therefore does not have to humble himself or herself to the higher intelligence, which is actually there to create more godliness and to help in the ascension path. Then verse 21 in this key to our 6. This key tells us that the Torah is a synthesis of all the languages that man must go through, lest man falls victim to the wrong vibrations of the fallen archons or optimal mind energies, and lest man confuses cosmological distances with the technology of the earth and thinks he has it all within the order of creation. The Torah teaches us not only to hear the language of light, but to humbly receive and use the language of light, use high dimensional language to probe and understand the higher spheres of the heavens, the Shekinah dimension of the Father's garment, of which the earth is a part. And then as you keep reading through, it talks about the pyramid, and even as I mentioned about Judah, and about the fact that what's happening is this mapping in the higher Israel. All I know, and I will be honest with you, I don't always even understand 100% everything I'm saying to you, but all I know is I feel the vibration of when I speak. And every time I get led to this stuff, the vibration is so high. My only challenge is sometimes I start to pull away from it because it's like, whoa, because it becomes like, where do I go next with it, my life? And so I've been training myself more and more to do this. And so the important thing is that if you don't understand everything that's been said, and I'll be surprised if you do, but you'll feel the vibration and certain things will be jumping out at you. Who can feel the massive increase in vibration just by what we've been doing? Just type in the text chat. You're a familiar, great. At the moment, I'm just, Christine, Alex, yeah, at the moment, I'm not entirely sure. All I know is that what I'm speaking is what I'm meant to be speaking, and I was told very clearly that all of you are ready for this, and that was why they wanted me to share this. And the fact you've continued to come. Yeah, thank you, Grace. So let's just continue to go through this one. I'm just going to keep this on the code and just finish this off before we go into the tithing. So I'm just reading through my notes, but it's very important to understand, and something that Hertak explained, which I have to admit right now has got my fascination, is in the Epistle Sophia, he explains that the actual key to the ascension that Elijah and Enoch discovered, which Christ already knew, you'll often read in scriptures about the dove. You'll see that when Noah, when the flood was completed, a dove came to him and gave him an olive branch. That when Jesus was anointed for his ministry, a dove came to him in the form of the Holy Spirit. You'll see this with all, you'll often see a dove, and you'll always see it with the highest ascended masters at a certain point of very high vibration. So the mystery of the dove is what is about the mystery of leaving what's called these realms and moving into the ascended realms. Because the whole Noah's flood, when he was on the higher mountains after it finished, of course, is really symptomatic or symbolic of basically ascending or moving out of his current earthly realms back into a higher dimensional way of thinking. Because that's exactly what actually happened with Noah after the flood. And of course, one thing I will mention is that it's been very interesting because Sammy, for example, who's had no background in this area, is starting to get it, because I got led to tell her to buy some comics, which was written by a very evolved guy years ago, which reveal a lot of stuff. If any of you are ever interested, just let me know and I'll give you the site. But he basically tells a lot of the higher truths in terms of comics. And she's actually told me for the first time she's actually getting a lot of it now. She's actually understanding the whole enslavement system and what's actually been done and how to escape from it, and why it's so important to do these higher activations, and how, as the key of Enoch says, there's a war against the scriptures and the higher activations by the archons and others to stop people being able to awaken, because it's otherwise. And yeah, Grace just says, you're actually putting into words what I've been going through yesterday. Yeah, look, I'm seeing things, Grace. I'm even been seeing things that are coming up in February and March. It's hard to explain. I don't really quite know how to put this, but it doesn't surprise me if people are going through challenges. It doesn't surprise me, especially if you're going through challenges in the financial area, because this is the area right now. There's a purifying that's happening. It's the only word I can use to describe, is a purifying, because there's a desire to prosper, each and every one of you, but within a realm that's not going to disqualify you or basically from the ascension. So yes, the good news is there is a way to prosper greatly, and even more so by actually being in the higher vibrational realm of thinking. But at the same time, it's actually better, as Christ said, to not have money than to miss out on ascension. And he made that very clearly. He said very clearly in the New Testament that when you're doing the Father's work, you will prosper. There won't be a problem with that. But he said, but if money has become your attachment and God, you're better off to give it all up. He said, and let that prevent you from being part of the ascension program, because otherwise, he was very clear, you will miss out. So don't be surprised if you actually are going through challenges in that area. And depending on where you're at, to teach you moving into a higher vibrational way of thinking and being. So, as I said, there's a heck of a lot going on right now, but in a really good way. So these keys of Enoch absolutely are here to help us as part of our ascension program. And I can see now why these have been given to us. And what you will find with these keys is that the more you read them and the more you listen to them, they just keep getting clearer. Like this key 206, I've read this more than any other key right now, and more than any other key. And today I read it and I saw things I've never seen before in it, like about the matrix and about the computer program and things like that. And yeah, Alex says, I was getting a sense through teaching through a board game for Sovereign in a cartoon movie. Well, Alex, listen to these ideas when you're getting them, because you're getting them from source. I mean, the comics written by this guy are first class. They were the ones that actually helped me to understand all the underground knowledge. The guy who did them has extraordinary, I don't know how he found a lot of it out, although I do actually know he found a lot of it out because he had people come out who'd been in the Illuminati and directly involved in the highest level of world Satanism to him and reveal stuff to him. And as soon as he started releasing his comics, people were having people try to run him off the road, trying to get him killed off. He had guys try to kill him in the dentist chair. It's quite profound when you read about it. So because of the stuff that he brought out, he revealed a lot of stuff. He even revealed how music has been used to control the mind and things like that. So I yesterday was actually told very clearly, when I was 18, I was given very clearly told that my greatest effect upon the planet would be in music. And I've never forgotten that, because it was given by a very profound prophet, someone I regarded highly, and many others. And the last few days I've been told constantly, because I know some of you have heard Grace introducing you to some of the higher music and the savior of my soul and some of these music from some of the old awakened churches that we're in. And what many of the world's greatest healers like Catherine Kuhlman, Benny Hinn and many others and Reinhard Bonnke use, and they will only use these music. And I've been getting messages to start not only playing them, but recording them, getting them out onto the awakening within, getting them into the world, finding unique and creative ways to do those songs and get them out, get them onto the radio. This is what I've been getting messages, because I've been told through music and even getting back to writing songs, because I used to write songs and some of them went well. One of them actually went worldwide many years ago in an activation song that I wrote. So this kind of financial, so when we're doing the higher realm, your creative mind will open up, your Pistis Sophia will open up, your divine feminine creative, and that will bring great wealth while serving the planet and using it for the higher good. That's the message I'm being given right now. So Tash says, what are the comics? Let me just find it for you. But yeah, so yeah, sure. These are the ones here, and there's a heap of them at Sammy, and you can always chat with Sammy, Natasha, because I have a feeling she seemed to pick really good ones. She got led to them as to which ones to buy because he's got a heap of them. But yeah, like he's got comics. Some of it's a little bit old-fashioned in the sense of a little bit religious, but the vast majority of it, this is a case of you just throw out the very, 80% of it is profound truth. And then there's that 20% little bit of the, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, where there's a little bit of bathwater, but most of it's pure baby when you use that analogy. So, for example, explaining about the Noah's Ark, this was a guy here who was a very, very high-level guy involved in the high-level black ops Catholic Church, so to speak, who reveals stuff. And then this goes through explaining more about how Satan's got into society. That was the main tree she got. Then there was some over here she got as well. That was really good. King of Kings, yep. Primal Man. Jesuits is quite interesting. Sabotage, that's a really good one. That gives you the history of scriptures and how they were preserved. The Prophet, that's very, very interesting. Gives the true history of Islam. Spellbound, that's the one that goes about rock music by a very profound guy called John Lance Collins, who was actually involved directly in the program to use music to entrap people's minds. And he explains how it was done. So anyway, if you're interested, you've got something else you can do. So who immediately got drawn to those comics straight away the moment I showed that? Anyone? I know the first time I found that site, it just jumped at me like, you've got to be kidding me. And normally I wouldn't go near a site like that. And I just knew, I was actually told after 3 months of fasting and prayer in 2004, when I was asked for answers, I was led to that site. I was specifically told to actually buy some of those comics. So yeah, like I said, there's the baby in the bathwater stuff like anything, but there was some profound truth revealed in those stuff. So yeah, anyway, I'm being led to share a lot of interesting stuff that I had absolutely zero intention of sharing, but that's the beauty when you've got masters who are far more outside these realms than I am. And as I was given a message this week, let God do the work, but God still needs hands to do the work. So right now I'm on God's hands, as are all of you. Jack Chick, Alex, was the guy called Jack Chick. Him wrote the comics. But yeah, so don't be surprised if you start getting more creative downloads in the days to come, because as you start this tithing, understanding this, it is going to awaken prosperity. This is what happens. As Catherine Ponder explained, once you start following the higher financial order, you will start to get ideas, you will start to have things open up, and you will become prosperous, you will start to prosper. There's no two ways about it. And the only reason that you won't is skepticism and unbelief. And this day, when you walk the higher path, you will prosper. It's not a question of you might, you will. It's that simple. So I'm now going to just continue on back with tithing. Unless if anyone's got any questions, just type them in the text chat. If not, I'm going to get underway with this and just do this part 3, because there's 4 parts to this series. We've done the first 2 weeks. We're doing part 3 today, which is mainly the 3 tithes. And then next week, we're going to finish off by explaining the tithing and the higher systems in the New Testament. So you can see that side of it as well. So if there's no question, doesn't look like there are. Okay, so let's get back to this, that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places. So here's where we've got the actual armor of God. Notice that the shield of faith above all. And I wasn't planning to say that, but that just jumped out at me. So there we go. So above all else, taking the shield of faith. So why is it so important? That just lines up with what I just said to you. So the shield of faith, absolutely knowing about prosperity and abundance and success is yours to enjoy upon this planet Earth and part of the process. When you read about many of the greatest Indian yogis, from Lahiri Mahasaya, Babaji, Sri Yukteswar, all these ones, all of them lived very prosperously because they all basically said very clearly to the masters, they said, we will do your work 100%, but we expect to prosper and not have to be slaves doing anything we don't wish to do. And that's something which lately I've been saying very clearly. I've been saying I expect that as I do this work, I will increase in my prosperity. And if I'm not, then that tells me I'm not on track. Sure, there may be a temporary delay while things are changing, but I expect it. And the more I'm speaking that and intending that, I'm just seeing things starting to happen. So Christ said, and this is the whole caveat to everything I'm saying to you, don't get caught up with laying for yourself treasures on earth. So keep in mind what he's saying. He is not saying basically go give everything up and become poor. Now, mind you, if he's saying if you are so attached to your wealth that it's going to prevent you from ascending, then you would be wanting to get rid of your wealth quick smart. And that was why Jesus told the rich man, more than ever, I just know that, to sell everything and give it to the poor, because he saw this guy had zero chance of ascension, because every time he had money, he became completely obsessed with money and attached to it. So the rich man, he knew this guy could not do both. So he pretty much told him, you're going to have to sell everything up, give it to the poor, follow me, and just live by faith and trust. And the guy couldn't do it. And that was why Jesus looked at him sadly and said, how few would enter the kingdom of heaven. Because at the end of the day, and you'll read this in one of Jesus's other many parables, he gave the parable of a great banquet, which was basically coded high vibrational language for a much higher feast or connection in the higher vibrational realms. And it pretty much said nearly everyone gave excuses. One gave an excuse that he was getting married. In other words, look, at the end of the day, I've got to look after my wife and family. They come first. Another one was like, well, my finances, I've got like real estate, I've got land, I've got business to attend to. That comes first. And they all had different reasons. And it said he got angry and actually said, well, fine. None of these guys are coming to the banquet. And that's why Charles Finney, when he taught in the Great Awakening that happened in the 19th century in America, when the Bible Belt opened up, he told businessmen, God expects you to prosper, but he also expects that your wealth is devoted entirely to the higher good. In other words, that his work comes first and that you do not put your business before higher work. So many of his people in his various churches he set up became very prosperous and did very well for themselves, even in times of depression. Many of them did well. But at the same time, these guys knew where their priorities were because they were well taught. And their commitment to the prayer, to the meetings, to getting out and sharing the messages was very strong. So this is why Christ says this very clearly. He says, don't lay yourself treasures upon earth where moth and rust corrupt, but lay up for yourself treasures in heaven, which can't be corrupted. In other words, energetically build everything in your life in the energetical spiritual realm first, and let your heart be connected there. Then allow everything to manifest in the physical realm naturally, because your connections and your priorities are in the right place. Then you will enjoy the blessings of it. Because he says no man can serve two masters, because he will always hate one and love the other. The moment you put money first, and some of you would have known what this is like, and I will openly tell you, I know what this is like. You start to hate one. In other words, something in you starts to loathe it. You almost hear the higher vibrational messages and feel mad about it. You kind of start to resist it. You feel angry when you hear the Bible or hear even beautiful music. Something in you just goes, that's stupid nonsense. And you start to actually loathe it. You start to disconnect from it, and you may cover it up well. And some of you will know what I mean, that when you get caught up with your family affairs, you get caught up with, a girlfriend or boyfriend, when you get caught up with business, you start to feel this frustration, this inner hatred, this almost anger towards the world, towards life, towards your partner, towards people around you, towards your family, towards anyone you can direct your anger and your attention to. Now, I feel this is really resonating with people right now. I know Sammy's nodding her head, but I suppose the physical things first before the things of the kingdom of heaven, you will hate the kingdom of heaven. You energetically will withdraw from it, and you'll start to go backwards, reconnect back into the 3D, and you'll start to move back into the aging and death process in the realm of the serpent. And the reptilians and the demons and the dark and the archons know this full well, and they wish it to stay this way to maintain control of the earth. In The Secret History of the World, written by Jonathan Black, which teaches the highest level mystery school and knowledge, underground knowledge, explains in the very first 2 chapters about the beginnings and how of the great fall of Satan. And he actually explains about it, or Saturn as some call. That's why the planet Saturn was called the fall of Satan, and how the whole fall of Satan brought everything back into dense matter. And at one stage he said that the earth got so bad that everything was dense, low consciousness, violence, death, killing, slowness, where like everything just stopping dead in almost no time had become that way. And he actually says, and this is a guy who had no religious background, he said if it wasn't for Christ, the earth would have perished. For sure, David Walcott said the same thing. Because if you actually study, for example, the book of Josephus, who is one of the highest regarded historians of his time, just before Christ, but when I read that book, I almost got sick when I would read what would go on, what was going on in the earth, the oppression, the corruption, how it was just normal to come in, rape the women. It was like a standard practice. It was standard to come in, and the soldiers, when they take over a country, wouldn't just take control. They would get like the babies, they'd throw them up and play with them on swords. So all the animal cruelty you see today with horse racing and others was nothing compared to what was happening then. Human death and human life was seen as nothing. It was almost like sport. So things had got very dark by the time Christ had come, because when the planet had got so caught up in 3D realm and caught up in the lower and in that realm, you start to hate the one and love the other. That is why in China right now, you see people getting tortured. Like there's a big thing about it now, like the Falun Gong monks, the Tibetan monks, Christians over there and people who are believers in Christ. If you don't go to a state-sanctioned Chinese licensed church, which basically when the government does what the government says, you will actually get tortured and put in concentration camps. And that's fairly well known over there. And so this is what starts happening. When you serve one master over the other, you will start to hate the other master. So you cannot serve God and mammon. So it's a serious command that Jesus is saying here. On the other hand, the danger is that people can go to the other extreme, which I again did when I started to see this. And for a while, I didn't want to go near money. I just wanted enough basics to be comfortable because I was terrified. And then as time went on, I actually realized that the truth is prosperity is also equally a great promise of the higher teachings, but always remembering who's your master or what comes first in your life. So this is where tithing is so valuable, because tithing, as you'll see when correctly taught and not in a manipulative sense, is a wonderful outworking of the higher financial system of Christ to give people the opportunity to actually enjoy the blessings and prosperity of Christ and of the masters, while still remaining on not only on the ascension path, but doing even greater good. And Tash says, doesn't matter if it's money or health. No, it's the same. If you get divine health and divine prosperity are actually kind of like an assumed thing when you're really on path. But equally, Tash, you're right in one sense that when you start to put your health over and above your path, for example, and it says when you go off path, your health starts to get affected. That's very clear. So very important to realize this, that one of the things when you follow the higher financial realm and the higher rules of Christ, that is a promise of great health and great prosperity. Exodus 15:26 was clearly said that you will prosper and you will basically be healed and no disease will come upon you. And when you follow the system, for example, the scriptures even teach you a diet, for example, that if you follow it will keep you in perfect health. People like Paul Bragg, who is John D. Martini's mentor, actually openly talks about this, and he followed that diet and he lived in immaculate health. And the Adventists today follow that diet. And we are more and more, Sammy and I, are starting to follow that kind of very much that high vibrational scriptural diet. In the Keys of Enoch, J.J. Hurtak actually speaks about, in the second chapter, the second page of the book, he's told specifically when he first met Enoch and Metatron not to eat the food of the false powers of the earth and to start eating high vibrational food. That was one of the first 3 commands he was given. So yes, your food, your exercise, your regime is very much important in part of moving towards ascension. Anna Ma, who was an ascension teacher, who 5 years ago, when she taught about the light bodies and moving into them, she did say, the closer you get to light body, you will notice your eating will start to change. I'm noticing we're eating less and less. It happened slowly over the last few years. I'm now going through days I don't eat much at all. And I more just eat now at a discipline because I could just about go for days of hardly eating now. But I'm still eating more as a discipline and as a keeping grounding. So it's the same with your financial stuff. It's having a healthy diet in your financial realm, a healthy diet in terms of your activations, what you're speaking of yourself and your finances, because Neville Goddard is very clear. He says, unless you are in the higher state of consciousness in your finances and the way you're thinking and talking, he says you'll never inherit the kingdom of heaven, which means, in other words, he's saying you will stay in your old way of thinking around your finances. So it's all extremely interesting. So this is where revision from the last 2 weeks about tithing is an ancient law that shows you're under a higher law of service, giving and contribution, not the system of mammon. And you're not basically, money's your main priority. If you wonder why I keep moving between these, again, it's because sometimes it doesn't right now. I can't actually read the chats unless I do that, which is a bit annoying. So there's a direct link between building God's house, a higher vibrational house, by following higher laws and financial blessing. So these are the various scriptures that I used last week. But when you build God's house, and you can follow higher laws and financial blessing, and start to speak this over your finances. So these scriptures I love reading. I love reminding myself of these ones. They're direct promises of great prosperity. When you actually read the book of Jasher, which is a reference source that was used in writing the Bible, a very written book of high vibrational history, it goes through, for example, and explains how the covenant people of God were always the most prosperous on the earth. Whenever they were on their path, they were more prosperous than anyone else. Enoch was very prosperous. Basically, Jesus was very prosperous. He didn't need to have lots of big assets and houses but believe you me, he had the richest people around looking after him. He was extremely prosperous. And Elijah was well looked after. Moses was well looked after. So prosperity and abundant provision, as Jesus himself said over and over again, is never a problem when you're on the higher path. And in fact, in the case of many of you, will also be a call to actually own great wealth so you can use that great wealth for the benefit of others. So this is why there is 3 tithes given. Now, there'd be no point giving a very complicated or very detailed system of tithing if the plan of God wasn't to bless people. And that's just logical. I mean, I'm sure you would agree when I say that. Why give a tithing system which is actually based on increase, which is the first thing that's important to point out. The tithe is based on the increase. And the word increase, what exactly it means? It means very specifically on the surplus that you have. So the tithing system operates within that, in other words, on the surplus. So it was never a case of someone being absolutely poor or broke being required to tithe. It was somebody who either was already prosperous tithing to remember where their wealth came from, or those who are stepping into wealth to the next level and desiring it would start tithing by faith so they could move into that realm. And you'll see that. You'll see both those scriptures. So either one, if you're already wealthy, following the tithe keeps the protection and hand of the masters on your wealth, or for those who desire to step out of being what's called one of the poor, which doesn't have to tithe, and actually moving into a case of abundance, it's a case of living, as Neville Goddard says, in the new way of being before you have it. That is why a tithing by faith can be very powerful as well, as long as it is genuinely by faith. And you're not just doing it out of a bit of greed or a bit of kind of guilt or a bit of obligation, but you're actually doing it out of joy, out of love, and out of faith, which Paul made very clear in Corinthians, great master, ascended master Paul, when he said that you must give out of the joy of your heart. So when you tithe from the joy of your heart and from a clear intention that you know that God is the source of your prosperity, and that you know that you already are prosperous, and the fact that it may not be in the linear 3D right at this very minute means absolutely nothing, because you know you are prosperous. It says God loves those who live by faith. And in fact, it says in Hebrews, the just shall live by faith. And that's what faith actually is. Hebrews 11, which is all about faith, which I've read to you many times, where it says faith is a substance of things that are not seen. So if you already have wealth, that's not by faith. When you're in the stage of moving to that next level and you tithe at a level by faith on the assumption that you already have it, as Neville Goddard says, that's true faith. So that's the two kind of ways you can tithe. One is from your already increase, or, and I do emphasize that this is because you have a revelation of it and you really know it, you feel it, there's a joy about it, there's an intention about it, and there's an attachment from it, where you're just saying, you know what, how it happens, God, I just thank you, I just know you will prosper me. I can remember when I would do it, sometimes I had no idea, and at first, I must admit, when I was first tithing, I started to get a bit upset because thinking it wasn't really working, but then I remember looking back over the last few years and seeing all the unusual sources of prosperity that had come. I noticed my wealth had actually increased. And I noticed that I was always having people insist on buying me lunches and dinners and all kinds of stuff. So it can happen in various forms. So in any event, going on to this, the three tithes, and I love the order in which they actually have their priority. The God first, the you, and the your neighbor. So the God first tithe is a way of saying that I know God comes first in my life. And I will always give first to God because I know then God will take care of me. And when I say God, remember, God is a plural meaning, Elohim. It comes from a plural meaning, Elohim, like master's alignment. It's just that everything is interconnected and all is one in that realm. So when I say God, that's basically what I'm saying, really. So the Melchizedek tithe, for example. So Genesis 14, I read that to you last week, where in the Melchizedek tithe, that was when Abraham was blessed and I am, and he tithed to Melchizedek, who it says is the highest priest in the order of those realms, the order of Melchizedek. Leviticus 27 says the tenth is holy to the Lord. Now, holy often is a weird word, but the word just simply means set apart or separate. So in other words, it's set apart. And so the tenth. And Catherine Ponder specifically talks about this in her chapter 10 of her book. The tenth, it says, belong to the Levites, who effectively, by tithing to the Levites, they in turn are tithing to Melchizedek. And you'll read that in Hebrews, that the Levite order then tithes in turn to the Melchizedek. And then don't forsake the Levite. And this is very important, and I'll get on to that very shortly. Then the feast and the celebration, which is the you tithe. So it's very important that after you tithe to God first, you tithe to you, which means you're putting money aside for your savings. You're putting money aside to accumulate and invest. You're putting aside money to enjoy. And then after that is the charitable or the poor. So notice that the order of reference here, and remember, everything is in sequence and in order. So, and you'll see that over and over again, there's an emphasis that do this correctly, do this correctly, do this correctly, do this correctly. You know, do not forsake the Levites, do things correctly. So that's done over and over and over and over and over and over again. So the greatest commandment, Jesus said, and this is shown in this scripture here, or activation language. Jesus said to him, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. So that's the God first. This is the first and greatest. The second, you will love your neighbor as yourself. Again, you'll see that same order. And although neighbor is mentioned first, you've got to read how it's actually worded. In other words, the automatic assumption is that you love yourself. So then he's saying, and by the way, as well as the fact you love yourself, make sure you love your neighbor also. So that's the order of the correct order. And notice he said, on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. In other words, everything that's written in the Bible, in every activation, Gnostic, mystery school teaching that ever exists, is all based around this law of love, first and foremost. So anything like you're learning about finances today is based on this law of love. Completely 100% based upon this law of love. Which is what's really cool. So see the order and really drum this into yourself. Many people, from my experience, people who are having challenges around finances, and when I've had challenges, it's been this way. It's in some way you're violating this order. It could be that you're putting yourself first and you're completely ignoring God and ignoring the tithe. It could equally be that you're actually putting your neighbor first. So if you're actually putting your neighbor first before God and before you, you're asking for financial trouble. You're actually asking for poverty. My view is that's the one way. If you wanted to learn today how to be broke, that's what you do. So if you said, Warren, my desire is to be completely broke and to stay that way, I'd say, great. Well, the first thing you do is always make sure you give unto others first, like give to your neighbor. Then if you've got anything left over, give it to you. Then if you've got anything left over, give it to God. Which, by the way, as you can see, Satan's been very clever, because that's what, by and large, he's used in his antichrist type of churches to do. To actually teach people to, by and large, do that. Or give first to the church, then to your neighbour, and then to you. So notice in some way these are violating the divine order. I will guarantee you that anyone right now who I can think of who's prosperous will either, number one, have been obeying this law either consciously or unconsciously, or number two, they are obeying it, but with Satan as their Lord, with a direct deal with the dark, as some celebrities have actually done. Because believe you me, when I say Satan and the archons know these laws very well. The Satanists know the Bible better than most people I know, even people who are pastors and go to church. It's one thing I found out. They know this stuff very well, better than them, and probably better than me on some of the stuff. They are very aware of these higher laws. They know how these laws work. They know how to manipulate them. So, very important to drum this in and let this sink in. First God, then you, then the prophets, then your neighbor. So if you're following that order, things will always prosper in your life within that higher realm. So the Levites were devoted to spiritual work, teachings of Christ. Melchizedek was a priest of the Most High God. Now, I emphasize here that the tithe here is for spiritual teachers operating within this order. And that's really important to get that. In other words, there's no point tithing into a work or any kind of work that's not in alignment with the higher work, that's not in alignment, for example, with you even, and not giving real value in teaching, but impacting and transforming your life. If none of that's actually happening, then all you're really doing them is giving them a free donation. That's not going to really help you a lot. It's very important that the tithe is given from a point of love, from a place of joy, and a place of inspiration. And if you can't do that, you're better off just to wait or sit on it and go, okay, well, what do I do with this until you can get something? And I've had to do that at times. I remember when there was a time when I ended up not being involved in any churches when I was in my awakening or any kind of works because I was just fed up with what I was seeing. And so for a while, I just made sure that I tithed the best way I could, which was to different people I was led to and different work from time to time. And it's very important to basically, as I mentioned, make sure it's coming from a place of inspiration and operating in this work and from what I call a place of intention that is done mainly for your own prosperity as well as the prosperity of the teachers. Because when you've got the spiritual teachers and prophets prospering, the work gets done. Imagine if in the time of Christ, the people had not tithed or looked after him. Imagine if at the time people were like, well, no, Jesus, you should just go out and get a job, you know. I mean, you're a great spiritual teacher, but why don't you just do it? You know, we do it. And so imagine, I mean, obviously it's a little bit of an absurd analogy, but imagine if Christ had to actually go and do that. Now, I'm sure you would agree that his work may not have been as effective because that wasn't his path. Now, sure, there were some teachers and some masters who chose to do that work just as an example to show that. You even read with great Master Paul, ascended Master Paul, when you read the New Testament. But it even says that at one stage he actually went, while he was teaching as a spiritual teacher, making tents and working as a tent maker. But he actually then clarifies and says very specifically, the reason I'm doing this is not because I don't have a right to live abundantly off the tithes for my work. He goes, obviously that is my right. He said, when I'm a spiritual teacher, I have the right to call that in. And he said, and I should be and you guys should be providing for me to do this work for you because you're benefiting from my teaching. But he told the Corinthian people of where he was working with, he said, the sole reason I'm doing this right now is at the time in that culture, there was a tendency for the priests and the churches to really abuse the system. And they were actually milking the people quite badly. And so what was happening was that people were kind of fed up with the whole idea of churches and spirituality and any kind of works. And especially when people started asking for money, they almost were getting irate about it. And it was affecting the power of the work and the message. So Paul said, I actually chose, just so you could see that money is not what's driving me, I deliberately chose not to take it. Deliberately chose not to do that, just so you could see that. But just to be clear, I have every right to do that, and you should be looking after your spiritual teachers. I remember when I ran the Fruitful Vine Church, I did what Paul did, because at the time it was horrific what was going on in the churches around us. I mean, the pastors were just shocking. I couldn't believe what was being taught in tithing. So I chose specifically not to take any kind of money from the church that I was running. I chose to run a law firm 3 days a week. And I basically chose to just basically cover purely expenses from the church, which I was very upfront with the people. And the rest of the money basically was used for the higher work and to help other things. And I did that deliberately because I was to not dilute the message, and because of the nonsense that was going on around the Rockingham area and many other places with the pastors and other leaders in the area. And even today with City Awakening, I'm still a little bit cautious at the moment until I can feel that people understand it. Because for me, it's more important that the message gets out correctly than there be any kind of thing that goes on for me or for Grace or anyone else. If people start thinking, well, hang on a sec, what's these guys' real motivation? So I teach this with some caution, and which is why you'll notice I often say things like, look, at the end of the day, if someone's not really getting blessed from our teaching, I wouldn't want people to be, tied to us. I really wouldn't, and to the work that's going on. I really wouldn't, because it's just no point. But it's a very important principle, and it's one of the reasons why the planet has gotten to such a horrible mess. I'm absolutely certain of it. And all through scriptures, you see this. Because on the one hand, many of those who are teaching in the order of Melchizedek are having to go out and do normal jobs and things like that. And even like the guys who run the Keys of Enoch, I kind of get a bit frustrated, not with HERTAC, but in Australia, the guys who run it here, I go to their webinars and they kind of say, look, we do this for free because we're not for profit, just give us $5. And I mean, I always give them a bit more. And I even said to him one time, it's silly. I mean, and they said, oh, no, we don't want to be seen as doing that. And this is a silly thing. You've got many churches out there who are definitely not in alignment with the order of Melchizedek, who are milking with all kinds of tithing system. And then many of the guys who, in my view, are doing great works across the planet have been affected because they're seeing the corruption going on in this realm. So they're choosing to do like what the Keys of Enoch people are doing and just take like $5 donations from people coming to their webinars and pretty much just barely cover costs. And same with Jack Chick's comics. And that's one of the reasons why Sammy even said to me, and then maybe we can do an affiliate with him. And I said, I don't know if I want to. I said, I want him to keep all the money. Because I said, if I send people their way to teach higher truths, I'm sure we're not making much profit from this. I said, I would rather, make sure that these guys get all the money and not take any affiliate. I said, I'd just rather give him the money. So the whole idea of tithing is to actually get things in the correct order. And that's why I'm convinced from the depths of my soul that when we get this thing right on planet Earth, we will see such a change in the culture and the governments and society. We will see a transformation across the whole Earth and across governments. We'll see a purity start to come in because we are a collective consciousness. And when we see corruption, when we see tax officers going on, then we see that there's something not right. It's kind of like if there's, for those of you who are farmers, if you've got all crops kind of getting eaten up and dying, there's a parasite, you've got to find what the parasite is. Otherwise, the crops will keep dying, and running around, just trying to do makeshift things won't solve it. And it's the same kind of thing with this. So I'm convinced, like I said, from the depths of my soul, that we get this right with tithing in planet Earth, we're going to see a profound shift in integrity. I remember in Thailand, there was a shaman I met there, a guy who's really switched on, and we were talking about this years ago, and he said something to me I've never forgotten. He said, I'm convinced the reason why Australia and America have such appalling tax officers is because the greed is so high within your countries and the priority around money, that it's like a balancing adjustment that's happening spiritually, energetically, to basically whack people around for their greed and make sure people are contributing. He said, my personal view is if people started tithing correctly, and this, by the way, is the guy who ran no church. He ran a business coaching operation, and he also did a shamanic work on the side. He said, if people were correctly tithing, he said, in those countries, he said the tax office would eventually become obsolete. It wouldn't be needed. And I remember looking at him, and the truth just hit me. And I just said, oh my God, I said, you're so right. He said, exactly. And that changed my thinking about it. I went away and started in a new light. And I changed my whole attitude to tithing and everything. And sure enough, in a period of time, I miraculously started finding ways out to minimize my own taxes. I remember when I got tax audited, it was so smooth. It was like everything went so smoothly. And I remember having a purity and peace when I'd go to the Father and say, you know what, this tax audit's going to be fine for me because I'm in alignment with your higher law. And the whole thing went like without a hitch. And I truly believe that from the depths of my soul. And I'm sure that some of you, if you're tuning into what I'm saying here, could actually feel the power of what I'm saying. And you can actually feel a resonance with it and can feel that it is coming from some master other than me. And I feel it could even be directly from Melchizedek. I'm just curious, who here is actually feeling this hit their soul and spirit, what I'm sharing? Because this is coming from a really high vibrational source, as I'm sharing today. Who's actually feeling that? Yeah, Sammy said she is. I'm actually quite blown away because I didn't get this to come quite the way it has. Alex, is anyone else? Just curious if I'm on track, if this is resonating or if I'm losing people. Yeah, William and Isaac. It's interesting, the guys are really getting it. I'm sure the women are too. The women normally get it before the men, but yeah, there's a bit of a conscious shift going on here. So Tash feels Melchizedek. Yeah, no, me too. And all I'm hearing, the message that's coming to me, is a passion and desire to actually help prosper everyone here while still keeping you aligned with ascension. That's what I'm actually hearing Melchizedek say to me. He just says, that's why he's really, you know, Melchizedek has been saying to me, he says, there's like this hunger in him to prosper all of you, everyone here. He's hungry because the truth is, imagine if we can get the wealth of the world in the hands of people who are aligned with the order of Melchizedek. Can you just imagine what would happen to the planet? Just feel it. Yeah, Christine Evans says, I love what Christine says. He feels the energy rather than the words in a deeper state. Yeah, brilliant, Christine. You've got it. You've got it. I'm just, Melchizedek, I feel he's just saying to everyone, like, can you just imagine where planet Earth would be at right now if we can have everything operating in correct alignment with my order, with the order of Melchizedek? Could you just imagine where the planet will be and how profoundly, you know, the brilliant state that planet Earth would actually be in right now? So it's a really profound thing. It's just, as we get this right, and that's why he's so keen. And that is why he's also, you know, saying to me very clearly to elaborate, to be specific, to instruct you, you know, and to do that. Yeah, Fiona feels the same as Mum. She says, yeah, look, absolutely. I feel this is what's happening. The women are going in deeper and the men are getting this. And they desire to prosper the men and prosper the women and prosper everyone, because this will also obliterate the need for the tax office. I'm going to go as far as to say for you, if you read Isaiah 33, it's very clear that when you move into higher dimensional, fifth dimensional consciousness, earth way of thinking, and you start living by this realm, it says you will not even see a tax office in your life. They won't exist. It's actually very clear. It says they'll be gone from your life. You won't be seeing oppressive governments. Their statutes, their laws won't come near you. They can't touch you. You're operating in a realm that's beyond their realm, the realm of the archons. They no longer have power over you. They can't touch you. They can't get near you. Let that sink in. And that is why, as I said, I'll openly say, that's why I've been cautious in teaching this area. For a long time, I've hardly spoken about it because like I said, there was so much abuse of this topic, and I've actually realised this is half the problem. I've been part of the problem too, because when people don't teach this properly, the false churches and the false places on the planet continue to preach what they're preaching, leading the people off track, causing a lot of damage to the whole concept of tithing, using it as really just another form of financial abuse for the people, like the tax office does. So this tithing is a voluntary thing. It's getting back to common law, higher law. It's a voluntary thing. It's something where you're giving value, you're receiving value, you're giving value, you're receiving, where the priests are accountable to Melchizedek, to God, where they give to God, they give to the people, they operate their work in the fear of God, in the fear of the brotherhood order, and following the higher laws, and with a love for the people. Like it says King David, a man after God's own heart. Their love for the people keeps them absolutely accountable in what they're doing. So you will see this here, that if you actually read about the greatest masters of kings in the Bible, the really ascended kings, Moses, when Moses had led the people out of the wilderness, before they were taken into their promised land, and this is a profound thing, but I haven't heard taught anywhere, but it's clear. If you see Exodus 36, before they came into their promised land, Moses called upon them to bring in money to help build the house of God, and actually build a house in the wilderness, a place to worship God, or a celebration center. And it said that the only problem that Moses had was there was so much wealth given to him and people bringing in so much money in abundance. He just said, look, stop the giving, stop it. I can't cope anymore. John Avendini said that when he taught about the tithe in Africa, the people caught it so powerfully, he had to tell people to stop giving. He said, we've got too much money, we can't manage it all. And the people's wealth went berserk. People were having things happen like uncles turning up out of nowhere and giving him a brand new Porsche, one guy had, who was a poor guy in Africa. Just said he felt led to give to him. He felt bad about never giving him anything, and a whole lot of other stuff. People were just given insane like gifts, and wealth supernaturally started coming their way. And in fact, when you read about Moses, it said when Moses left Egypt with the children of Israel, this is something again that virtually no one picks up on. It says the Egyptians were so scared they gave him big gifts of their wealth. The people left into the promised land wealthy as fuck, excuse the French, but they left extremely wealthy. And they didn't have to go work their ass off anymore. It was just given to them. So there's something about this whole land actually doing this and operating in these higher realms. King Hezekiah, who it says did right in the sight of the Lord, in the sight of Yahweh, it said that the first thing he did was start calling in the wealth from the people to build back the house of God. And he actually said, because it is not good that the house of the Lord should be neglected, basically, as it has been. It is not good that the house of the Lord should be neglected. Josiah, who I named my son after, but who it says was, it says a king, but there was none like him all before. It said never faltered in his path. It said that he drove Satanism out of his kingdom, destroyed the false worship of the archons until they were terrified of him, removed any witchcraft, Satanism, anything like that. You actually can read it. I actually cry whenever I read it, what this guy did. But it says he called in, it says when he actually read the law of God and read the tithe, it said he actually tore his clothes in distress. And actually says, he's like, I can't believe it. We're screwed up. We're in a mess. And he ordered the people, he didn't just ask them, he ordered them to start bringing their money in to build the house of God. And they all came running. They built the house of God. And when you read like books like Joshua and others, it says Jeremiah and the great prophets of his day, it was considered by many one of the great times of Israel in that time. There was a peace. And that's why to Jeremiah, a lot of his books are so much lamenting and weeping, because it was after the days of Josiah, when Josiah died. And the new kings came in who didn't follow Christ's law. And of course, as a result, going back to his principle of you'll love one and hate the other, they hated the prophets and the people who are still operating in the truth because they exposed their sin. And Jesus says this. He said, when you're in the light and you're around someone in the darkness, you expose their darkness, they'll hate you for it. So that's why he said, no one's greater than your master. You will get shit from your family. You will get shit from people around you if you walk the path of Christ. So, but you'll see this over and over again with his good kings. King David, Hezekiah, Josiah, Moses, these guys, Noah. I mean, for Noah to build an ark, he wouldn't have been living on doing raffles or fundraisers. He would have been given the best of the best of the best of his days to actually do this. So understand, great wealth and great abundance is a critical part of changing the planet and doing the work of Christ. And getting back into correct Melchizedekian order on planet Earth, and it starts with each of us individually, is going to bring profound changes, because it only took 12 disciples to change the world. Today, right now, we have, although it says we have 11 here, I mean, Sammy's sitting here right now, which makes it 12, and no doubt some of you have got other people listening as well. So we're going to have a minimum of around 12 or a minimum of 13 people, because Edward, I know, is listening to this, for example, and James, and probably 14 or 15. Now, if every single one here took this on, what's being said today, it only took 13 Jesus and 12 disciples to change, and then Master Paul to change the whole world in a day. 14 people. That's all it takes. Think about it. So this is a whole new realm of financial order. But that is why it follows on from there. The next thing that's part of being holy and being spiritual is to absolutely live abundantly and have the time of your life with your money. In other words, put some of it aside for your savings. Put some money aside to invest, to increase, to further your increase and increase even more. And put some away for a holiday, for a spiritual retreat, to have fun, to eat the best foods. As Sammy would say, do Lalani skincare. As for some of you others would love to do. You know, just whatever you love to do. And as Ecclesiastes says, do whatever your hand finds to do it with all your might, and eat and enjoy the blessings of the Father with the wealth that you're given. In other words, enjoy your wealth. Absolutely, like, enjoy it. And what Deuteronomy says, it says, bring the tithe to the place the Lord your God wants you to bring it. Now, where's that? Well, very simply, bring it back to you. It says the kingdom of heaven is within you. Bring it back to you. Make sure that some of your wealth is for you. Paying yourself abundantly, putting money aside. And if you follow the order, you'll always have enough. The truth is, there's something about it, and you all would notice it, if you're always paying others first, doing other things first, I mean, say, oh, I will do some saving if I've got some left over, or I will do this for me if it's left over. There never is enough left over. Whereas if you do money aside for yourself and for God and for the higher works, somehow, miraculously, there's money. And some of you would know exactly what I mean when I say that. You would know what I mean. You'd feel that. You'd experience it. So, command, and now you'll love this. There was a command to eat and rejoice as you're doing it. In other words, it wasn't a request. The command was, while you're eating up, rejoice. Have a party. Put some music on. Dance. Celebrate. Run around the room naked if you feel like doing that. In other words, have a wild time. King David, it actually says that when he brought in the Ark of the Lord back into Jerusalem, the Ark of the Covenant, which is the sacred presence of God, talked about in so many literature, it actually says he got so excited he stripped off down to his jocks and started dancing around. It actually says that. And his wife was so horrified, she kind of had a go at him. And he even said to her, I will become even more undignified than this in the presence of Christ. And it says, where she became not so blessed. And Grace learned that one, because when we were involved in the church, I used to get so excited, I'd go crazy. And one time I threw a towel over my head and started being like an idiot and everyone laughing. And she was glaring at me like, stop behaving like that. And she clearly thought the voice of her father, and all he said to her was, Grace, remember David's wife. And she's like, oh my gosh. And she quickly stopped, and then afterwards came to me and goes, oh my gosh, I got told off, I'm really sorry. And that's what I love about Grace. She hears the messages and acts straight away. So the point is, here's another command for you. To use your money to enjoy life, have fun, go on a holiday, go places, and enjoy. Eat food that you like doing. You know, do all this kind of stuff, because everything is systematic and orderly in the kingdom of God. It's not about doing it as you feel like it, but as a covenant child of God, invoking his covenant in your life and finances by clear intention. And the clear intention is important. So when you're doing this, you're saying, I'm being obedient because I'm bringing in prosperity for God, for the higher work, for the priests, so that all the priests are prosperous. Truth is, I love what a guy called Dudley Daniel said. The people who are in the order of Melchizedek deserve to be prosperous as heck. If they're doing the higher work of Christ, absolutely. You know, by wearing the best clothes, eating the best. Smith Wigglesworth, the great healer, used to say, the day when I'm not wearing the best suits, having the best clothes, going to the best places, traveling first class wherever I go, whether it be plane or train, I will immediately quit serving Christ and I will go back and I'll start running a plumbing business. He actually said that to Christ and to the Holy Spirit. He said, if I ever have to get in that situation, but as far as I'm concerned, you're no longer on my work, and I'll just go and get a normal job and just do a good work as a plumber. And he always prospered. He always traveled first class. He always wore the most expensive suits. Jesus, his clothes were so good that it said that they divided his lots up. Now, why would they do that unless it was incredibly good? They argued over his clothes. In other words, Jesus had the finest apparel. He dressed really, really well. He lived prosperously. So there's an absolute enjoyment. I know myself, when I get clothes, I get good clothes, really good clothes. To me, there's no point buying cheap stuff. It's an embarrassment. Number one, in any event, I don't enjoy wearing it. I always like to, when I get something really good. I always challenge myself. And the last few times I've gone to America, I decided, you know what, I'll always go business class to America. I decided that for myself. And if I can't go, I won't go. Now, I made that intention for myself 3 years ago. And every time things would happen, like a run of abundance would come in. And then for me, and I remember taking all the boys and we went business class, a run of abundance came in. We just left to go business class. And then then suddenly an incredible special came on, something like 70% off business class to go Air New Zealand. So things like that start happening to you, the favor of God, when you start to follow the higher order. And so it's not about doing it as you feel like it, but with an intention and expectation. And it's very important, and you notice I've written here, that you ignore delays in linear 3D time. So let's just have a quick look at the book of Habakkuk, who was a pretty cool prophet. Now, I often get his spelling wrong. This guy's name's really hard to spell. Okay, yeah. We kind of like spelling Philippines. It says, and the Lord said to me, this is taught, by the way, in many motivational teachings and other sort of stuff. This is taught. The Lord said, write the vision and make it plain that he may run that reads it. So notice he's saying that, but notice what he said. The vision is for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. In the Keys of Enoch, J.J. Hurtak explains there's usually a delay in time, in 3D linear time. Because the 3D linear time is much slower vibrationally, there's often a delay, frequently a really big delay to happen. Sometimes it can be quick, it can be smaller, and the more you start to move in a higher vibrational way of being, the delay can become less and less and less. That's why Jesus could do miracles. That's why Catherine Kuhlman, Reinhard Bonnke could do miracles. As an aside, Catherine Kuhlman's meetings in the 70s, they'd have trucks waiting outside her place. And you know why? Because when she'd finish her meetings, there'd be so many people out of their wheelchairs and no longer needing their crutches, that they would be a store of them. They'd take away and then give them away to a place. That was how much power she was moving in. So you ignore delays in linear 3D time and just know it. If you're going through a temporary period where you're having some challenges, just go, it's a temporary thing. That's it. It's only ever temporary. Nothing's permanent. In the Ministry magazine, it says, even a superficial study of the tithing system reveals that several years back, Israel is something that resembles a Christmas club saving system, only of a much broader religious and social meaning. The Levitical law required a Jew to go to Jerusalem on certain occasions. So it's kind of like a communion. So number one, the tithe that's given to the higher work. Number two, the tithe for you. And I generally break this up into two things. There's the money that gets put in the savings, like for wealth accumulation and growth, and to keep increasing. And there's the money put aside for fun, enjoyment, and for doing the things you like actually doing. And both those things are done. And then the third one that comes in is the neighbor tithe. Because then it's like, you know what, now that you've got the blessings and you've taken care first and foremost of God's work and the higher work on the planet, and showing that the planet comes first for you and the higher work of service comes first for you, and then making sure that you're looked after, because if you're broken, if you're sick, you're really not a lot of use, in all honesty. And I personally believe it's one reason that I'm generally pretty healthy these days, because when I haven't been, I just go, you know what, I'm no good to anyone until I get in good health. And then from there, you can take care of the less fortunate. You can go, you know what, for example, I'm really happy that I'm healthy now, but you know what, there's people out there who are not healthy and don't know what I know. People there who can't afford to get decent health care. People there who are really sick. Yeah, I want to help these people. Well, maybe I'll set up a foundation to do this. See, I'd love to do that myself and find a couple of people who have that passion along with me, even in this work, and say, let's just set up one between us, some kind of benevolent institution fund. And I know how to set that thing up, which can myself and a few others, and then we can use that within the work to start becoming something to take care of the less fortunate. I would love to do it, for example. So if any of you, that resonates with you, just let me know, afterwards, just send me a message, because maybe we can talk about it. Because this is where you talk about sharing the wealth and actually using it for good. And now let's just ponder this, the fullness of this coming through. Could you imagine if we're following the Melchizedekian order in what we're doing here, what would happen on the planet? I know I've said this today a few times, but imagine, would we need taxes? Not really. Would we need to have poor people? Not really, because even those who are struggling will always know they're abundantly looked after. That's why in the Old Testament teaching, there was a gleaning of the fields teaching I've mentioned here, which means there was specifically commanded when you're doing your harvest, at the harvest time in the farming, don't just pick up all the spare struggling sheaves of wheat and other crops that fall on the wayside, leave them there so the poor can all turn up and grab their share. And that's what would happen. So no one really missed out. Everyone was always provided for. They didn't need to tax people. And it's why it said they were hated by the archons, because the archon system at the time in Rome, in Babylon, in Greece, in Canaan, in the Moabites, the Ammonites, all the 7 nations spoken about in the Sons of Light and Darkness book, they were all using heavy taxes, heavy tribute system, way to extract the wealth. And that's what Satanism does. I've heard that a Satanism tithe is 40%. Like if you make a deal with Satan, this one I can't say I've verified, but I've been told this by pretty good sources, but without knowing it. My understanding is that when you make a deal with Satan's celebrities, around 40%. That you've got to give back. And my guess is it probably increases as time goes on too. So socialism is Satan's counterfeit of his system. So in other words, socialism it sounds really beautiful, like, yeah, but it's a counterfeit, because it's a forced form of taxation that you got to give. Like socialism that's happening in America, we're talking about 70% taxes. Venezuela was hitting that, France was hitting that. And this is always collapse, where you force money out of people, and then you just give it to the poor. But inevitably, it ends up making the government people who are running it make sure they take a generous share as well. So, but socialism, the reason it takes off whenever it gets brought in is it sounds really good. It's a distortion of this whole principle of taking care of the poor and taking care of people in society who are less fortunate. So in generally 1428 years, notice that it didn't, in other words, they didn't have to give as much to the poor or to this tithe as they did to the first 2. So if you're giving more money to help others than you are to yourself, you're breaking the order. You actually should be giving more money to yourself than you are into other things to help other people. And then only if you've got a real big increase, you can give more. That's what it seems to be saying, which is really quite fascinating when you think about it. And again, very much different to what you probably heard in most spiritual work. But first God, then you, then others. And if everyone who was wealthy did that, you could probably very quickly see in the Melchizedekian order, the planet would be in very good shape. You wouldn't have much poverty. I also add that under the Melchizedekian order and teaching, everyone would own their own house, because part of the rules of the law of Moses was that everyone had the right to own their own house. And only the surplus land, once people all owned their own place, was to be made available for purchase. So these are basically high-level laws to make sure no one misses out. So there's great benefits from tithing. Let's just quickly go through this to finish off. I've already mentioned the fact that tithing is a form of spiritual or asset protection. So those of you who've heard me as a financial teacher in taxes, tithing is a really good asset protection. So if you ask me, Warren, how do I protect my assets? Well, here you go, tithing. So tithing is a really great form of asset protection. So we can see that. Now, the second one is you're protected from a curse. And I really do want to emphasize here that I more think of a curse here as an absence of blessing as opposed to a direct hex or nasty spell. Obviously, Yahweh and Christ don't sit there doing black magic witchcraft on your finances. So let's be very clear what's being said here. It's more a case of an absence of blessing. So, for example, if I had, let's say, William going outside my system and doing things in a way that didn't align with me, or if James and Edward started doing it, or Josiah, I would still make sure they were well provided for as my sons, but I wouldn't be blessing them in the same way and giving them special favors. Let's just say that James and Edward, were full on like alcohol addicts and drug addicts. I mean, I'm saying that because those of you don't even know how absurd that is, but always getting drunk and going around and basically blowing money, on prostitutes and things like that, and strippers. Well, I'm not exactly going to be giving them a lot of money, and if I did leave them anything in inheritance or whatever, I'd probably put it under a strict trust to make sure they didn't do anything stupid, where they would be limited in what they get and for what purposes. Whereas let's say that, Josiah was amazingly good with money, responsible and doing a higher work with it. He's probably the one that I would give the most to or trust the most. So that's more the way to think about this, what this is saying here. Because when you stop looking after the Melchizedekian priests, and this is in Malachi, what they were doing in Malachi's time, 400 years before Christ, in a time of very low consciousness on the planet, it was crazy what they were doing. And it actually said they were ignoring the priests. They virtually had no priests. They had no spiritual teachers. They were all living their own thing. They're all going around doing whatever they felt like it whenever they wanted to do. And so because of that, there was no spiritual attention to the higher work. So they were told very clearly, you little, mugs, you better get your ass into gear and get back looking after your spiritual teachers and do your tithe correctly. Then they said, then God even said, test us. Prove it. Tithe and watch what happens. We will prove to you this works. But stop doing what you're doing. So curse is more an absence of blessing as opposed to some kind of hex or spell. And the best way, as you said, to put it, is when you're not putting the Father's work first, he leaves you to it. And this is what the Council of Nine told me last year, I might add. They said to me, when you're not doing our work and the Father's work, we're not going to do anything other than make sure you're looked after. We'll always make sure you're looked after, Warren, but don't expect to prosper and don't expect to, any favors when you're not doing our work, because we're not doing you any favors, because then you'll start pulling away from ascension. And I was actually shown that my higher self, before I came on, had specifically put a command to never let me prosper in my life while I was off track, because I was concerned. So when you don't basically put Christ's work first, there's only going to be three ways for you to go. One is that you're going to struggle financially. Two is you will get wealthy working your ass off, but you'll do it outside of your divine purpose, outside of why you're even here on the planet. Deep down, you'll know it. You'll be living in fear about losing it. There will be a sense of deep regret and remorse that will keep building in your life. Good chance you'll get sick at some stage. You'll definitely start aging. And then, like probably a large percentage of people on the planet, at the end of your life are sitting there with quite a few regrets or things you would have done very differently. And then say, oh man, I wish I'd taken more west, or why didn't I just do my purpose of trust? And the third one is get wealthy with a direct or indirect deal with the dark, which, although that's probably the minority, it's basically not a path by which you could go. So the good thing is there's a fourth way, and that's just simply to work within the higher system. The third thing is tithing as a form of tax minimization, as I found in my own life. And as I shared about the Thailand shaman and what he shared with me. So there's actually a specific scripture which I use in the City Awakening Church, which is extremely clear. Jesus twice spoke about tax minimization. So if you don't think it's important, there were two specific scriptures in the New Testament where Christ talked about tax minimization. And what's very interesting is that the guy who quoted them is Matthew. Matthew himself was a tax collector before he started following Christ. He worked in tax. Interesting, isn't it? That's why I like Matthew. So Matthew, of course, as you would expect, got excited about the fact that Jesus was encouraging tax minimization because the Romans were charging very high taxes at the time. And Jesus said in Matthew 17 that the sons of God, in other words, those who are following the Melchizedekian order and following the order of Christ, are free from taxes. And he even said to his disciples, nevertheless, he said, so we won't offend them, because Peter had promised they'd be paying tax that year. He said, we'll pay them this year. But he said, just go and get the money out of a fish's mouth. In other words, go down to a fish and pull it out. In other words, manifest the money, don't give any of your own money towards his buggers. Pretty much what he was saying. So Jesus didn't have a particular big thing about taxes. The only thing he did say when they tried to trick him in Matthew 22, he said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's, which was very clever, because what he's pretty much saying is you want to play Caesar's games and believe you're caught up in that system and make Caesar your main priority and put that lower realms first, then go, yeah, you better give him what he tells you. And that's why they went very quiet, because they knew he'd owned them big time. Because what he was also saying by implication was that the sons of God are free. Ezra 7 is what I quote in my own constitution for City Awakening. And I used to quote the scripture every day over myself when I was paying taxes until eventually I manifested low taxes. And because it's actually a command. To this day, this exact thing is still within our law to this day. Churches are the one vehicle where you can get very, very high tax benefits and exemptions legally in Australia and America. And here, it's because of an ancient decree that was given by the Persian king in the scriptures. Whatever is commanded by the God of heaven, because this guy wasn't stupid, he knew full well that the God of heaven, the higher gods, had higher priority. Let it be diligently done, for why should there be wrath against the realm of the king and his sons? Satan knows full well the way these realms work. So when there's a command coming from the Father, they don't mess around with it. And that's why they were very clear. Let's not get rough. They know the only way they can disobey the laws of the Father is when the people who are working on the Father's behalf start disobeying the laws. Then they can do what they're doing. And that's why he said, we certify you that touching any of the priests and Levites, singers, or ministers of his house of God, it shall not be lawful to impose toll, tribute, or custom upon them. And knew Ezra, and this is what I used to cry when I'd read this, because it showed me my path after the wisdom of God. All such as know the laws of God and teach them but know not. I was told that's my path, to teach the laws of God to those who don't know them. And whoever will not do the law of your God and the law of the king, let judgment be executed speedily upon him, whether it be the death, banishment, confiscation of goods, or to imprisonment. And that's exactly what I actually have quoted and spoken over our church. For anyone who ever tries to touch the wealth of City Awakening or touch what we're doing, let this be the case. Let them invoke this upon themselves, that it will bring them death, banishment, confiscation of their goods, or imprisonment. In other words, spiritual or literal imprisonment. So I've spoken this over this, and I've noticed that anyone who's come near this foundation from government, they generally run a mile pretty quickly, and they behave themselves because they're dealing with a higher law. They may not know it exactly in their mind, but they are. So this is higher stuff you're getting here, everyone. And this is what starts happening. That's why Jesus said that for those who believe, they have the right to become the sons of God. And that's why he says in Romans 8, for the whole earth is groaning waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. The keys of Enoch, he talks about the manifestation of the sons of God that's happening. The 144,000 ascended masters, the full manifestation of all the sons of God, because that will redeem the earth and bring in the full order of Melchizedek and complete that part, that program. So you can see this here, tax minimization. And the final one, which I've already talked about, and I don't need to go over again, is attracting a prosperity into your life. So actually attracting the prosperity. Yeah, Grace. Yeah, look, I agree, Grace. It's just so strong right now. I'm kind of a bit, wouldn't say I'm lost. I'm a little bit like, not quite sure where to go now. But yeah, we're in a higher realm. In all honesty, we're taking back the law, everyone. That's one thing I was shown years ago, that we're part of a generation that will see that we're going to do what Christ said when he said, bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. The book of Enoch specifically says it was written for a generation in a long time to come, at the time of the end, who'd be part of bringing in the awakening and bringing in the new earth order. That's what I was told last year when I had my encounter and I connected with the realm of Enoch and the realm of the Father. I was told, Warren, that's why you set up your work, because you're operating and working in the power and the spirit of Enoch, the spirit of Christ, the spirit of Melchizedek, to basically bring this message to the earth, basically turn the people and the planet and the law back to Christ and back to the order of Enoch and back into alignment with God's law, to bring in a time of blessing and bring the order back into and prepare for the ascension. That's it. So yeah, this is like higher teaching, everyone. Tax minimization. The sons are free. None of these laws can touch you when you know that. None of these taxes can touch you. They can't get near you when you start operating in the order of Melchizedek. No one messes with Melchizedek. No one messes with Christ. No one messes with the order of Enoch. But they mess with the lower vibrational stuff and they'll piss all over you whenever they feel like it. So there's great prosperity that lies ahead and that we're stepping into. And yeah, they do love that. Absolutely. They're here. I mean, I can tell you now, the masters are excited. They've been waiting for this day. You know, when Charles Finney actually appeared to me in my car, or visited me in my car in 2006, and I started to bawl my eyes out because I'd always loved him. And I remember all I said to him was, you know, I would do anything to see the power of the awakening that happened in the Bible Belt in the 19th century. And all he said to me with love coming out of his heart, he said, you have no idea what lies ahead of you, Warren. You're part of the awakening, the greatest days that we all look forward to and we all rejoice. That's what Jesus said. He said that Abraham, Isaac, Jacob looked for this day and they rejoiced because they knew what was coming. They all would love to have been part of this day. And that's why they said, you are so privileged that you are part of this day. That's what I was told last year. You are so privileged that you are part of this day. When my friend Mike Millick, a great prophet, had an encounter and was taken to the heavens and met Smith Wigglesworth, all he said to him was, what I saw was nothing. He goes, you're in the time that we all wanted to be in. You're in the time of the greatest awakening that ever is going to be seen on planet Earth, in ever before and ever since. And that's what we're in right now, everyone. I've got almost tears in my eyes because we're in such a powerful time right now. And we're part of the work to usher in the great awakening. A new awakening, that's why it's called this, to awaken planet Earth, to institute the order of Melchizedek and finish the work that Enoch said would be done in the wars of the sons of light and darkness, to take out Belial and take out the princes of hell, take out Leviathan, take out Lucifer, take out Satan, take out the sons of Anak, take out all these guys and these archons who are against the Christ, and let them know that we're coming for them. Let them know that we're already here, and we don't come in anything that's in our own strength, but we're coming in the name of Christ, in the name of all these great masters. And it says in the book of Jude, it says that, you know, it says that in the book of Jude very, very clearly. And Jude quotes from the book of Enoch when he says this. He says, Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, the Lord comes with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all and convince all those ungodly of their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and all of their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. He's quoting directly from Enoch chapter 1, by the way. So yeah, grace had dropped into my heart. Yeah, we're in the greatest days. We really are. We're in the days where we're awakening the whole planet, and we're part of this great awakening. I'm just letting that sink in right now. I even feel just to read about Enoch. I'm just going to follow it just a bit more because I feel this is awakening some energy. By faith, Enoch was translated, but he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony, but he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and is a rewarder of men that diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not to seen as yet, and remembering that it actually says that as it was in the days of Noah, so it shall be in the days of the Son of Man. The days of darkness, in the same way in Noah's day, that the reptilians, the archons, the sons of Anak, they had completely taken over the earth. Sammy actually said to me the other day after reading the comics, she goes, "We're actually in the time of Noah, aren't we?" I said, "Yeah, we are." And it says, "Moved with fear, preparing an ark for saving of his house, by which he condemned the world, became heirs of the righteousness which is by faith." It's what we're doing here now. We're building an ark, a portal for ascension, to be part of a higher earth, to help humanity and bring in the order of Melchizedek to the whole earth. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out not knowing where he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles of Isaac and Jacob, the heirs of him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And that's what we're here building right now. Much higher vibrational work. Yeah, it's softening. There's a lot of healing happening right now. I can feel it. I agree, Grace. So we're in a powerful time of a great, great awakening. Just going to let it sink in. I'm just going to open up for any questions, thoughts, any things that are coming to you right now. Just share in the text chat what's happening for you. I'll just be really interested to hear just what's happening for you right now. Everyone is being touched by the Spirit. Very powerful. Lots of tears, Christine. Yeah, Grace. Everyone's being touched by the Spirit. Mark, soaking in. Yeah, soaking in. Yeah, it's just really soaking in. I can't help but say I especially feel that the Pistis Sophia is being awakened. And that's why we're starting a Pistis Sophia mystery school training over the coming days. And there's a few people who've enrolled in it already, but that's the divine feminine, the power of the divine feminine, the full creative energy that actually restores the true divine feminine, and of faith and wisdom and the creative energy. So if any of you feel led to reach out to me, just do so and I can talk to you about it. Alex, tends to really look after myself, health and wealth, restful follow. Yep, I actually agree with you, Alex. Like I said, the tithing is very simple. First God, then you, then others. That's the order. As soon as that breaks down, there's a problem. What about the rest of you? Isaac, choice in transition of quality transactions, how we work, how we give, we have the choice. Yeah. Just feel to share one other thing. I know Grace always keeps bringing this up with me, so I'm going to bring it up again. But years ago, when we ran Fruitful Vine, and I started teaching about tithing, we saw some extreme happen with people financially. And it was because at the time, what we taught was revolutionary, because people in the area had all been taught you must tithe. And I said, no, you don't have to tithe. I said, it's voluntary. And I actually had people saying to me, but we feel guilty, we just need to. I said, well, no. I said, if you feel guilty, please don't. Are you struggling? And one lady was actually on welfare. I said, well, don't right now. I said, just come along and enjoy the meeting. I said, you can help out in other ways. And then what it did was it really touched people in the work. And we started seeing people who are wealthier start to get led. And we were having people being led to tithe. And then as they started tithing, and they were doing it from their heart, excited, they started being given crazily, creatively clever ideas. We had a guy manifest a lot of money in options trading, and he'd always found investing in options trading had mixed results, and just things opened up for him. We had others who saw things happen. And that's what happens when you're doing it with intention and with joy from the heart. That's when things really start to work. Yeah, Fiona, lots of waves of energy going through me. Yeah, doesn't surprise me, Fiona. Yeah, I can feel that. There's some like Christine and Famita who are in tears right now, and Grace, and they can't say a lot. Famita feels the Father and the Master rejoicing. Yeah, so do I. I've just been having some quite profound stuff, and I'm actually seeing right now how excited and they are just about things moving along and what things are meant to be doing right now. Okay, everyone. Well, what I'm going to do now is just finish off. I feel to finish off with a quick code activation, which I wasn't planning to do. Just a little bit of an activation to finish off. I'm going to go to this one here. I feel this is the one. Just breathe in your third eye. Just breathe it right into your third eye. Hold for 4 counts and out for 8. Just really allow that to go through you. Just going to finish up by saying it is commanded that by the higher activation codes and by the higher order and lineage of the Maharata, the Mueva, Lahiri Mahashaya, Kiyose Hasha, Lahiri Mahasaya, Babaji, Nagaraj, Saint Germain, I particularly feel, and all those involved in the order of financial realm and abundance for Yeketswa. And we pray a direct impartation and blessing directly from the lineage and the line of the order of Melchizedek right through each and every person here right now, in every way, every shape and form, in accordance right now with their works and in accordance with where they're at and each of their highest priority now. Just feel it. Feel the connection with his masters, with you. Saint Germain. I feel he's here. I feel Babaji's here. Yeketwa, Lahiri Mahasaya, are all here right now. And the awakening creative ideas, creative thoughts. Feel the woman of wisdom here as well. Just keep letting this sink through you. Grace is like, wow. Okay, everyone, I'm going to just, any more questions or comments before we end today? And this, by the way, next week is what we'll be teaching about. And that's for those who want to tithe today, out of the voluntary abundance of your heart. So any comments before we finish? And that's for those of you who desire to tithe from your heart, or obviously in alignment with what's been given. But yes, just feel free just to share what you're getting. Any comments? Tash, fake your day. Can you sing or do piano next week? Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I've been getting to do that. I'm seriously thinking about it too. There's a guy who's a technical music expert I know who owes me a favor. Somebody who I helped him out a lot, and he's going to help me produce an album or start putting my music down. But yes, I've also asked him if he can help me learn to connect my computer in to the piano so I can actually play and sing it straight through. He said, yeah, there shouldn't be a problem. So that'll be even better. So we can get amazing sound coming through when I play. Kristen, that'd be great. Yeah, look, I know I've been given a lot of very activated music, and even last night or 2 nights ago, William was with me when I was taking some realms of some music, and William would share how we were seeing some profound energy shifts happening as I was playing music. Grace says, you're going to do some in Albany, and Christine will play too. Yeah, I'm seriously thinking about Albany. I'm actually bringing the piano, Grace, my electric piano and amp, because that's obviously got some really, the sounds on that one are quite profound. So I'm seriously thinking about doing that. So wouldn't take much to convince me anyway. So Kristen's practicing her piece. Oh, absolutely. I like how you volunteer, Christine, Grace. Whether she does as much, I don't know, but that's great. Any thoughts for you to share, Grace, before we end? Alex, I'm good in the tambourine. Yeah, you could do that. Tash can do dancing, maybe.
Natasha's actually looking forward to dancing. She will do the spirit of dancing
Tasha.
and communicate through her body. All I want to share is that I felt that the words that was taught today went right deeply into the hearts, and that it's going to grow and grow and manifest in all areas of your life. And I felt that the heart was really plowed through. In the beginning, you were just like plowing and plowing, and then the hearts were soft, and the seeds went in. So I'm looking forward to actually see what happens in your lives.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. What I've been getting messages is that what's going to happen from a lot of his teaching, they're really working a long-term perspective here. So that's what they're aiming to do. Just absolutely. I feel that as weeks go on, things will keep building and building. So it's not going to be like a sudden transformation, is what they're telling me now. You're going to see gradual shifts. You're going to wake up and have more clarity, more clarity. An idea will come. You'll act on it. Then before you know it, weeks will go by and you go, hang on a sec, I'm doing a lot better in life. My health feels better. I'm making more money. Things are just working out. I don't quite know how it's happening, but it just is. That's what I'm getting right now, if that makes sense to you, Grace.
Yes, it's all a mustard seed right now. So
yeah.
A mustard seed is going to go small, and then it will grow to a massive tree, so that all living things and living beings can go underneath and be comforted and be secure and get away from the rain and the sun.
No, it's excellent.
Yeah, so I feel like that this week is going to be a change in everyone's thinking and habits, and there's something in you that will prompt you to do things that you might not understand, but I feel like you're going to be led. Your guides will be leading you to the things of the unknown and the mysteries of life. So I really encourage you, everyone, to really tune into that, because they're starting to really tap into your heart. They're knocking on your door. Just open wide, just open and see what happens.
No, fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. And there's some more comments here. For me, we call it praise dancing. William, you and Dad can dance too. Yeah, Grace, I think you're going to be dancing as well.
Yes. The boys love me dancing in the house, that's for sure.
Oh dear. And before Tash goes, no pole dancing. Yeah, no, we'll leave it to you and Sammy, Tash.
Yeah, Tash is very flexible.
Oh, what a crack up. Yeah, well, as long as I don't do the pole dancing, I think everyone will be happy.
Oh dear.
Okay, everyone. Well, before it degenerates any further, I shall see you all during the week and next week. Bye for now.